christiangeekcentral.com. Well, my editing skills are crap, but can the same thing be said about Fantasy Island? Stick around and find out. Hey, I'm Peter Franson from christiangeekcentral.com and Spirit Blade Productions. This is my uncut review of Fantasy Island. The synopsis on IMDb reads, "The enigmatic Mr. Rourke makes the secret dreams of his lucky guests come true at a luxurious but remote tropical resort. But when the fantasies turn into nightmares, the guests have to solve the island's mystery in order to escape with their lives." All right. I didn't like this one. The distributor or production house, whatever the relationship is, I can't remember, it's called Blumhouse or Blumhouse, B-L-U-M House. And I like a number of their movies because they seem to kind of excel at using a modest budget combined with some really creative and interesting ideas to make some very engaging movie experiences. You know, they are responsible for, I believe, Kin, which was one of my favorite movies of a few years ago, Upgrade, which was my favorite movie of 2018. So they've really put some real gems out there as far as I'm concerned. But they've put just as many, if not twice as many, movies that are just kind of like not my thing at all. This one definitely falls into that category. As far as like what this animal is and how it feels, the vibe, the story, all that kind of stuff, I would describe it as a teen horror movie, you know? Not a teen slasher movie because it has supernatural elements, so it's not just some slasher killer, you know? But it's that kind of vibe, but with a supernatural kind of threat. Very kind of like if the CW network made a movie, you know? So the characters struck me as very shallow and one-dimensional. I really wanted a more deep and thoughtful script. You know, the idea is we have these characters coming to this island where the promise is that no matter what your fantasy is, it can be fulfilled on this island. And then it's clear, even from watching the trailer, that those fantasies that these guests have take a dark turn. Now, what I think a more thoughtful script would do is showcase the darker side of those wishes. You know, you've seen these kinds of fantasy stories all the time in movies. In the Twilight Zone anthology series would be a good example of this, where someone thinks they get exactly what they want, and then they discover over the course of the story that really there's a darker side that they haven't thought through to getting this thing that they have desired so much. And in that way, a story like this can just be ripe for some great teaching, some great philosophy of life, you know, and some great exploration of our desires and maybe what is wrong with some of the things that we desire that we haven't really considered yet, you know. So, but this script does not strike me as being near thoughtful and reflective enough to offer anything in that department. It's instead the guests, and instead of being up against kind of the unintended darker side of their wishes, they're just kind of up against the supernatural threat of the island, you know, not so much the dark sides of their own wishes. There's a little bit of that in there, you know, but it's mostly they're up against the supernatural threat of the island and what it is and, you know, what it does. It deeply lacks psychological realism in terms of the characters and their reactions to what they are experiencing. You know, there's some token reactions. I almost said Tolkien. There's some token reactions to, you know, the fact that, oh my gosh, this supernatural thing really is happening, you know, but it doesn't feel really grounded, and people really don't lose their minds like I think they would if they were really encountering supernatural things like this for the first time. And so as a result, because of the lack of psychological realism and just the lack of kind of like really fully realized three-dimensional characters, I didn't feel the drama of this story. I didn't feel the tension. I just didn't care because these characters did not feel relatably real. They felt like caricatures in some cases rather than characters. Both the jokes and the dramatic beats just fell flat for me because these didn't seem like real people with real personalities. Especially there's a pair of brothers that are on vacation on this island together, and they just almost seem like a spoof of like 20-something bros, you know, out having a good time. I mean, it's like, oh my gosh, it's like a, oh, yeah, it's, anyway. Without spoiling anything, it ends as though it's setting up more movies after this one. It ends on a note that suggests, okay, the island is going to continue doing this thing, and people are going to continue willingly participating in that. And I'm just like, why in the world would anyone stay on this island after the events of this story play out? I'm looking at these characters, and I'm like, why are you staying? Why are you staying and going to continue to perpetuate what this island does to people after seeing what you saw and experiencing what you did? Does not make sense to me. So if you're looking for that kind of experience that's going to be engaging because of how it kind of asks the question of what if this really happened to real people in the real world, it's not that kind of thing, because these aren't real people from the real world for the most part. I think there was a character played by Maggie Q that I felt like was probably the most grounded of all of them, in my opinion, but anyway, your mileage, I'm sure, will vary. As far as the cast goes, these are fine actors as far as I can tell. Some of them I've seen in other things before, and I know that they can do solid stuff, but it felt like the acting performances felt like TV quality, and I don't mean today's like premium TV experiences. I mean like what you typically would have expected from TV in the last 20 to 30 years, as though the actors are kind of rushed, and they were just presented with stereotypes by the director of like, you're this type of personality, go! And then we're shooting now, rather than really knowing their characters front to back and bringing out subtextual layers in the performances. It's just not that kind of movie that's offering those kinds of performances. As far as the visuals go, I thought that the effects were pretty decent with, there's a kind of a CGI eyeballs oozing black liquid kind of effect. That's the signature effect of this movie, and it still looked like CG to my cursed eyes, but was looking just realistic enough that it did have me unsettled a little bit when they showed that effect. Like lots of movies from this production house, it cleverly does not need to rely on visual effects despite the fantastical nature. That's one thing that I will give a script like this one, is it presents this really fantastical concept, but it shows it in a way that doesn't, demand a really expensive visual effects budget. But it does use, what it has well, in terms of its effects budget. Unfortunately, the costume design and the story take lots of opportunities to objectify a ton of actors, both female and male actors, appealing, I think, to just hormonal teenagers. That's who this movie seems like it's for. There's no nudity in the script, but the casting, the costumes, the script, the situations that it creates frequently create these moments that are meant to focus on actors' bodies, which is really unfortunate. Let's see here. The themes. Like I said earlier, this type of story could really be ripe to explore some really interesting themes, the moral, philosophical, spiritual, what have you, that really could trigger some worthwhile thought and conversation. And I just don't think this movie is meant to do that. I don't think it's going to do that for the vast majority of people. They missed some major opportunities about talking about regrets in life. That is a theme. I think that they're maybe wanting to do that, or they think to themselves, this is our theme, But because of the way they present the characters, and they don't, I don't think it really is going to be likely to trigger those kinds of thoughts. And in the same way that the script doesn't strike me as being as thoughtful as I'd like it to be, I think that their philosophy of life isn't as thoughtful as I'd like it to be. Because, what we see at the end of one of the characters' story arcs, as they're still dealing with some regrets that they have in life, the best that they are given by another character is, you just have to forgive yourself. And I really don't think that that is sensible advice, unless you are God, and then you are in a position to decide what is just and who deserves what, and you have the position of authority, moral authority in the universe, and so you are the one that can give yourself forgiveness, but I mean, that's such a nonsensical idea. We really aren't in a position to forgive ourselves, as popular of an idea as that is. And I've even heard that expression used among Christians, and I bet that if you talk to them about what they mean by that, they would actually be in some way talking about, you need to recognize that you are forgiven because of what Jesus freely did for you on the cross, But I think that it would be wise for us to change our language and instead say just what we mean, that, what you really need to do at this point, after doing what you can to to restore your relationship with whoever you've wronged, or done whatever you can to kind of like restore the effects that it's had on other people, if you're still dealing with these unresolved feelings, then all you can do at that point is recognize that you are forgiven as a believer in Christ who is trusting in the sacrifice of Jesus to pay for your sins, but we don't have the authority to forgive ourselves. And so that's really a strange, self-defeating type of idea that is perpetuated a lot in our casual conversations and in our entertainment. Now, I have no idea what your tastes are in movies, but if I were a time traveler, I'd go back in time and say, Peter, skip this one. I mean, you're going to look at that trailer and think, oh, is this going to be another one from this production house that is going to do some really clever and interesting things? No, it's not one of those. It's one of the many others coming out of this production house that do not do that and just kind of seem to be appealing to the lowest common hormonal denominator. So go ahead and skip this one. It's a shallow teen horror movie that you will never want to make any time for. You can get my spoiler-filled reactions to Fantasy Island today, including my thoughts about where they would go with a sequel, what they could do with a sequel that I think would be interesting or satisfying to me. Anyway, all that's in my spoiler car video series, just one of many perks available at one of the tiers of support over at patreon.com/spiritblade productions. This one has an MPAA rating of PG-13 for violence, terror, drug content, suggestive material, and brief, strong language. All right, those are my thoughts. I would love to get yours in the comments below. Please like, share, subscribe, click that bell to stay connected to what we're doing. I want to thank the Spirit Blade Insiders for once again making this review and so much of my content possible. You can get info about the benefits of joining again at patreon.com/spiritblade productions. And then I hope you'll join us soon over at christiangeekcentral.com as we continue to geek out and seek the truth. Hey guys, thanks for tuning in. We've got a ton going on here at Spirit Blade Productions and Christian Geek Central, including our in-depth Bible study for geeks, movie, game, and other entertainment reviews or commentary, live streams, Christian geek news, original audio dramas, and tons more. And on top of all that, you can become a Spirit Blade insider with an influential voice and get access to exclusive content and rewards. It's your involvement as a patron that will keep all of this going and growing. So I want to thank you for your consideration in that. For more information, please check out our Patreon page through the link below at patreon.com/spiritblade productions. Thanks for listening.